I have a little update on the 3DFX console. I've got a few pieces in from Amazon and other places where I'm basically ordered stuff this time around to save on space, make it a little bit more power efficient, and make it a little bit more quiet. So the first thing I want to show off is actually what's kind of running right now. I finally got myself a little, wattage meter for mains type stuff, which will be useful. The other thing I got was a Pico power supply to replace this full ATX power supply I have sitting here. Obviously this is just a placeholder. I think I mentioned in the last video I wanted to get one of these. Basically it's looks like a little, ATX power supply connector. Hopefully I don't throw that into the fan. And it plugs into the same place that the ATX power connector would. The only difference is obviously it's a whole lot smaller than that big brick. And basically what it does is it takes in a DC 12 volt power supply brick and converts the 12 volts down to 5 volts and 3.3 volts where needed on the ATX connector. The power adapter I got is just a 90 watt power adapter, or maybe a 96. Yeah, it's 12 volts, 8 amps, so 96 watt adapter. That Pico PSU is rated for 20, or no, not 20. It's rated for 90, and so this will be a little bit higher than the Pico power supply, and I'm pretty sure that it's not going to draw more than 60 watts total. I just have it booted on at idle and it's at 36 watts. So once I remove things like the inefficiency of the Antec power supply and the CD drive and peripherals attached and everything like that, it should drop it down a little bit. So I think we'll be fine. We'll have enough overhead for we'll have about a 50% overhead in the power supply, which will be fine. The other thing I got is some right angled adapters that kind of look like this for IDE. So I'm going to put that here possibly. I haven't figured out exactly where this is going to sit. There is kind of a space issue in this thing, kind of where everything's located. I wanted to put it here, but then placing it here I realized that obviously the CPU is in the way, so that doesn't necessarily work. And once this graphics card goes at a 90-degree angle, when I find the adapter that I bought, it's going to be a little tight in here for everything. So I got to figure that out exactly, but I did get these headers just to see if I need to swap these at some point, I can. I also got a Noctua, whatever you want to call it, 40mm fan. They really go all out on this packaging for a 40mm fan. I've never seen anything like that before, but hey, you know what? If it ends up doing what it should, I'm happy with it. But basically, it should cut down on the noise. You can kind of hear how the fan's running right now. It's a little bit louder, so than I would like it to be, especially for something that I would like to have sitting in my living room. The other thing I got, and this is something I have to play around with, I haven't ever worked with anything like this before, and it kind of gets into more of the software part of this project. I got a little OLED screen. I think this is 1.5 inches, obviously by angle, because that's how you measure displays. So this, I'm thinking, will sit in the front of the machine. And the purpose for this is, I don't know if that's in frame, but I wanted to kind of replicate how, everyone would have case badges back in the day on their PCs. And I wanted to make something that was a little bit more 2020. So I got a little OLED screen. I'm planning on putting this in the front of the machine and displaying things like the 3DFX logo and possibly things like thermals and everything like that. But the other thing I want to display is the Xbox 360 controller adapter status. So basically, the Xbox 360 has an RF adapter that plugs into the motherboard, and that adapter is really just USB. And if you modify the wireless adapter drivers on Windows properly, you can use that like any other wireless adapter. So I'm going to end up using one of those because I think I'll be able to design a custom board that plugs in here and takes the chip off of that RF adapter and lets me do kind of a little custom configuration on it. And to trigger things like sync and some other features like the little boot animation and stuff like that on the adapter, you need a serial connection, which you can do with an Arduino. So I was thinking, since I'm already using Arduino, I can hook this up to that Arduino and provide all the functionality for the case badge, and then be able to talk to it over like RS-232 or something. So we'll see we'll see later on exactly what that looks like. That's kind of a nice to have. At the very beginning, I'm just going to have it show the case badge and possibly the status of the controllers, which ones or how many are connected and everything like that. But doing things like showing the current game that's running or thermals or something like that would be really cool and would give this kind of a I have two basic goals I want to achieve with this. I want to do right by 3DFX because they're an awesome company and make something that looks like it belongs in 2020. If what would it look like if 3DFX themselves made a console in 2020? And then also I want to make something that is true to the original system. So I want to use original hardware and I want to use original software. I don't want to do any glide wrappers or anything like that. I want to do it all on silicon. And I'm going to end up I'll do another video at some point about this too, but I would like to make my own custom front end that kind of gives like this late 90s, early 2000s feel, because that's when I associate the Voodoo graphics with, because I remember shopping around for my first PC and everyone was talking about how Voodoo was great, and then you just kind of didn't hear about it anymore. So I kind of want to hit what I think Voodoo was at its peak, which was around 1998, 1999, and then, which is around when this card was made. I think it was actually 2000, but yeah. So a couple other things that are coming up. I'll cut to replacing this power supply, and we'll see that. We'll install that today and see what that's like. I would like to take this graphics card and move it at a 90-degree angle. There's some thermal stuff that has to be done with that in order to make that a little bit more viable. This backside here, I don't know if you can see that silver part there, that actually kind of acts as a thermal transfer. So I'm going to end up putting a heatsink on the back of this thing and cooling it a little bit. When the graphics card lays flat, I'm going to put a laptop blower fan on it to cool it down a little bit, because even right now it's a little toasty and it's not doing anything. And when it's really running, it's pretty hot to the touch and could probably burn you. So I want to cool that down and get that taken care of. So let's go and run this Pico power supply. It looks like this is using 36 watts. I'm going to boot up into Windows and play some games and just monitor how much power usage that this normal power supply uses. We'll see if it cuts down on any usage. I don't think it will, but I do want to measure first how much power this is drawing in total to see if it's within our limits of 90 watts from this adapter here. So we'll do that real quick, and then we'll swap it out and then try it again. So I'm testing out the power usage, and it looks like we're pretty good. Looks like we're sitting around 45 watts is about what it maxed out at, which is pretty nice. I'm playing Carmageddon 2 right now, which for Voodoo 3 2000 isn't super taxing or anything. This is running in actually Direct 3D because it's been kind of a pain to configure this thing. I'm running on Windows XP right now. I decided to not do Windows 98 for various reasons. But anyway, so this is running in hardware mode. I did verify that. The graphics card is actually really hot right now, and we've only sat at like 45 watts max, which is pretty nice. So with a 90 watt power supply, we should be well under, what anybody would consider safe. So I think we're in the clear. I'm going to switch out the power supply, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, here we go. So this is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to take out this power supply and replace it with this little thing. So, see, you got this connector. Make sure to take all this stuff out. I'm going to plug in the same amount of peripherals just because it seems like it can handle it, so I think we'll be fine with that. The final system won't have a CD drive in it, so we don't have to worry about that. I do dislike how these cables come out on this side, and it looks like we might be able to flip them, but yeah, that might be something I might want to change. I don't really like that because coming out and like that is kind of a pain in the butt. Oh well. So we'll unplug that. We got the SD adapter. We'll take out the CD drive. Yeah, and we also don't need like this connector. This is for, you know, for about a CPU if you're going to do like a Pentium 4 or something like that. So we don't need that cable, which is nice. And oh, we only have one connector here, so I guess we're only doing unless I got a splitter. Guess we're not doing the CD drive. That's fine. That is a-okay. And I'll probably remake this cable for sure because I would rather use the floppy drive style connector. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All we need is the brick, which I think uses a standard power supply female connector on it. What is that, IEC 13, I believe? Okay, that should be it. So I keep losing things to actually turn on the machine with, so I'm going to use this ruler. We got power. Oh wow, this thing is way more efficient. So doing boot up previously, this was using around 35 watts, so this is about 10 watts less. That might be because of the CD drive, but yeah, we'll see. So it's back up and running, and as you can see, putting it under the same load, it is about 10 to 12 watts lower than on that old Antec power supply, which is actually really great because, you know, if this is running at a peak of what, 33, 34 watts, and we were talking about, you know, maybe tagging on with the RF adapter and the little screen and everything, we're talking maybe 2-3 watts more than that. So 35, 36, 37 watts total. I mean, that's, you know, that's what, like 40% of the total capacity of the power brick and the Pico PSU. I like that. I like that a whole lot. And what's actually really nice about that is if I wanted to swap this brick out then to a smaller one, to say, you know, instead of a 96 watt, do a, I don't know, what are the other things out there? It's going to be 12 times, you know, if you did like a 6 amp, you know, power supply and get it down to what, 72 watts? We could make this brick a whole lot smaller. And you know, make it a little bit easier. So that's really cool. That's a neat little development. It seems like this card doesn't really consume much more power than. We'll swap out the fan and real quick, and then we'll see how much that makes a difference. I just finished swapping out the fan. Here's the old one, and it's not any smaller, you know, height-wise, but I would say it's at least half as quiet now. I can still definitely hear the fan, but it's like not that big of a deal, and I think this is just running full bore right now, so I didn't see anything in the BIOS for adjusting the actual fan speed. That might be something we'll have to handle some other way. We'll figure it out. It might even be like doing a little motor controller on the thing, but we'll see. We'll see exactly what that looks like. Sometimes this old hardware can handle that stuff, sometimes it can't. But yeah, that's basically it. Next time I'm